Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a podcast by Practical E-Commerce.
This is Kerry Murdoch with Practical E-Commerce. Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations. Selling products on third-party websites is not new. What is new is Facebook's latest test, the so-called Facebook Buy button that allows e-commerce merchants to sell their products potentially on that platform. There is no better expert on third-party selling than Scott Wingo, the longtime CEO of ChannelAdvisor. He joins us today to discuss the Facebook Buy button, among other multi-channel selling topics. Well, Scott, thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Kerry.
Scott, we are here to discuss the new Facebook Buy button, the so-called Buy button in Facebook. You, of course, are the CEO of a leading e-commerce provider, ChannelAdvisor. My first question for you is, what is the Facebook Buy button?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Facebook announced through a blog post that they were doing a test of they call it a new ad unit in kind of Facebook speak. And they've been doing a lot of these new advertisements that are not just banner ads. They're what they do is they take something in the news feed and they promote it, and then they have an action associated with it. So you may have seen, especially on a mobile device, an install now or download now kind of an action. So what this new test does is it's oriented towards e-commerce, and it allows the consumer to not only see a product advertised in their newsfeed, but to buy it right on Facebook without having to leave Facebook. So that's what this test program's about, and that's what they have started beta testing.
What is the size of the test right now? Do you know how many merchants are using it?
I don't. I think it's very small. I'd say they're testing it with some smaller retailers just to make sure that they get everything right. And we found 2 or 3 sellers that are doing it right now. So it's still a very limited test.
Okay. Scott, as you know, this is not Facebook's first attempt at e-commerce. Back around 2007 or so, in 2007 or so, they experimented with something called Marketplace, which, as I recall, was something similar to classified ads. There have been different integrations over the past few years of different shopping carts, essentially shopping carts on Facebook. Most of those tests or activities have not been successful. Why does Facebook think that the buy button, or what is your view of this ultimate success of the buy button?
Yeah, and it's important to even back up a little bit and say why would Facebook care about e-commerce? And I think the reason why is when you look at some of the larger companies out there, like at Google, it's widely reported about 40% of Google's revenue is due to the retail/e-commerce vertical. So it is one of the biggest advertising verticals, and that's why you see Google catering to retailers with things like product listing ads. So if you're going to have an advertising platform, you really do need to conquer retail at some point. So I think that's part of what's driving the interest there. The other thing is mobile. One of the most interesting stats to me in e-commerce right now is the fact that when someone's on a desktop or tablet, they tend to convert between 2 and 3%. Which is, we can always do better as an industry, but that's what a lot of our economic models are built around. On a smartphone, based on our data and all the other industry data we've looked at from ComScore and whatnot, that conversion is sub 1%. So I think those are 2 interesting data points to have in mind. Number one, the advertising 40% is retail, and then there's this mobile conversion rate problem we have as an industry. So with that in mind, looking at the history of what Facebook's done, they did have that marketplace, and that was really a partnership with a company that had done a Craigslist-like thing, did not get traction. And then a lot of brands kind of organically tried to do stores within their Facebook pages, and that didn't really work because there was nothing inherently social about it. Then what happened is a company has kind of organically solved this, and that company's called Lolly Wally Doodle. It's funny, whenever I tell people about this, they used to laugh at me, and then their CEO is on the cover of Inc. magazine, and now everyone kind of knows about him. But what this lady did was she had bought a mill here in North Carolina she was going to get into the manufacture of kids' dresses, primarily for girls, and it did not go well, and she was liquidating a bunch of this inventory on Facebook, and found that if she would list an item on Facebook and then have people comment on that item in the news feed, it could go viral. And the reason why is if you and I are friends and you see me commenting on some third party's newsfeed item, that shows up on your newsfeed, so friend of a friend, as we would say. And that probably gets you curious, and you're like, why did Scott just say that? And you go look at it. So that's what really has happened here is I think Facebook has seen the success that this company and several others that have kind of copied that model now have had, and it solves the primary problem that the last attempts did not, which was how do you tie this into what people are interested in and what they see on a daily basis. So instead of me having to hunt and find this stuff, if my friends are actively buying these things, I can see it and it becomes viral. So I think that's what's different about this approach, and I think that's why it has a pretty good chance of working is because it already is working. I think Lolly Wally Doodle's built a over $10 million business off of this pretty quickly, and as Facebook is just kind of codify what already is working.
For our listeners that aren't familiar with that company, say that one more time to make sure they catch that. Lolly, say that.
Yes, Lolly Wally Doodle. So it's LOLLY, WOLLY, then Doodle, DOODLE. Lolly Wally Doodle.
To follow up on something that you just said there, Scott, you asked the rhetorical question of why is Facebook fiddling with e-commerce. I've wondered the same thing. You could make a case that what they're doing now is, successful. Facebook, as you know, is wildly profitable. I think their margins are 25% or greater. Last year they made over $1 billion of profits. So could you expand on your thought about they ultimately need to conquer e-commerce because right as it is now they're extremely successful. Looks to me like.
Yeah, and some of the a lot of people have kind of forgotten about Facebook because they had some negative publicity around their IPO, and a lot of people kind of believe that they're in some way a failure, but it couldn't be further from the truth. To your point, the one metric that gets me really excited is the monthly active users, and in the advertising world they call those MAUs, monthly active users, and so Facebook has 1.37 billion monthly active users. And a staggering number of those active users access Facebook through mobile. I think it's right around 1 billion. So Facebook has gotten this really great property in that when people are on their smartphones, it's the number one activity that they utilize, and there's a lot of different data on that. So with that in mind, they have this prime real estate, and as they've been selling advertising, I think the feedback. This is speculation on my point, but when you look at the advertising industry, you have kind of two buckets. You have brand advertising, and this is where BMW does a big TV commercial, or even a retailer can do this, like a Home Depot or something, just getting their brand out there so people are familiar with it. And then you have more transactional kind of advertising, or some people call it direct advertising. So you have brand and direct. To date, Facebook's revenue is largely on the brand side, with the exception of gaming. They do have some game companies. And then the direct, they've been dabbling in direct, and it's been going very well. It hasn't been e-commerce direct, though, but it's been the app ecosystem. So far, a lot of the direct advertising they've been doing is either for gaming or for different applications. So I don't know about you, but I'm always seeing things like Uber or Lyft or the Groupon application or these kinds of things being advertised in there. And I think they're seeing really good results in that. And then as you go through the different verticals in the world that have direct advertising, retail is one of the top ones. And again, I think we can all look at the blueprint that Google has put out there for building a very large, successful, advertising-driven company. Retail is one of their largest verticals, if not the largest vertical. So I think just like the world of e-commerce, if you're Facebook, the bar is always being risen, and you have to keep growing and to continue to perform like they have been. They need to figure out e-commerce.
Okay, let's change direction, Scott, just for a sec. Many e-commerce merchants will say something like their most important assets are their brands and their direct relationships with their customers. And to take that notion a step further, for merchants that would rely, say, on the Facebook buy button or rely on any third-party channel, those merchants inject an intermediary between what they think is their most important assets, which is their brand or their customers. So what are your thoughts on that generally, and on utilizing the buy button specifically?
Yeah, and again, this is a very early program, so it is what we would call a marketplace, and our definition of a marketplace is when you're a retailer or a branded manufacturer and you're selling to a consumer, and it's not through your own website. So eBay and Amazon are the usual use cases we talk about there. Now eBay and Amazon do have they have some positives and negatives, and one of the negatives, to your point, is that you don't have that direct relationship with that customer, and you're not acquiring that customer when you sell there. So that is an argument, and we could debate that, yes or no, and maybe we'll have time for that. But I think with this new Facebook system, because it is more advertising driven, maybe, and again I'm speculating, but maybe you would acquire that customer. So it could be more of almost like listing your products on Google. Yes, the traffic's not coming back to your website, but if you got that consumer's email and their address and whatnot, and you could remarket to them, then it's kind of more of a hybrid. It's a bit of a marketplace and a bit of a customer acquisition vehicle. So I think we could be looking at a different type of a beast here, because it's not going to be 100% eBay, Amazon, and it's not going to be 100% advertising like a Google to your website. It's somewhere in the middle. So it's going to have elements of both, which I think could be interesting. So we'll have to see how it plays out, and if Facebook does allow there to be an acquisition there. If they do, I think it kind of gets over that argument.
You're, of course, an expert in third-party channel marketing, to state the obvious. What would you say to a merchant that said just that? What I said earlier is that using a marketplace like Amazon, injects an intermediary, and I don't want that. You're a leading proponent in third-party channel selling. What would you tell that merchant?
I would say that's great, and if you're Walmart, and you have tens, if not hundreds of millions of customers already, then that is true. You do not need an intermediary. However, only Walmart is Walmart, and there's not a lot of us that have that luxury of not having the exposure to hundreds of millions of buyers on the internet. So I think you kind of have to say, if you really want to get your products in front of consumers where they're shopping, you really need to be on these channels. Today, by our math, somewhere between 25 and 30% of transactions happen on marketplaces. Amazon has 250 million active buyers, and eBay has over 200 million active buyers. So those are buyers that are out there looking for products, and it's a zero-sum game. That consumer is either going to buy that product or not, and if you make that choice not to put your brand there or your product, then you're kind of self-selecting that you're not going to sell to that consumer. Another thing I would point out is frequently these transactions can actually be the most economical you have. So what a lot of people do is they kind of say, if I sell something on my website, my margins are 10%. And then eBay and Amazon charge 10%, so I would have no margin. Well, that's not really fair because you have to line up the eBay and Amazon fee not with your margin, but with your sales and marketing expense. And I think what you'll find is when you have those sales on your website, your sales and marketing expense, unless you're very, in this kind of place where you're getting all this free traffic, which is diminishing over time anyway, if you're buying traffic in any way, then it is usually, in our experience, cheaper to just sell on eBay and Amazon than buying traffic from the usual suspects.
I've referred a couple of times to the company for which you're the CEO of, ChannelAdvisor. Could you bring us up to date on ChannelAdvisor, or tell our listeners that aren't familiar what ChannelAdvisor, what your company does, and what you're up to these days?
Sure. We're a 13-year-old company based out of Research Triangle Park, North Carolina, and we're a software company. And what we do is our software helps retailers of all sizes. We have over 2,600 customers, and what we do is we help them manage these e-commerce channels. So, if you want to sell your products across eBay, Amazon, we call those marketplaces. We support 37 marketplaces. We also do comparison shopping engines like Google Product Listing Ads, Shopping.com, PriceGrabber, et cetera, and search. So imagine a centralized dashboard that lets you not only publish your products across all these different channels, measure the efficacy of them, but then also you have a centralized dashboard for figuring out, if I had some incremental dollars, where should I spend them, or if I wanted to grow a little bit faster, what are some of the best ways for me to do that? So that's what our software does. We have over 600 people in the company, and wake up every day thinking about e-commerce and how we can make our customers successful.
Now, of those channels that you just mentioned, does that include, if not now, potentially in the future, integrating with with Facebook and the buy button activities?
Yeah, as best I know, Facebook hasn't announced a program for folks like us to work with that yet. But we're pretty well known for our ability to add new channels pretty quickly, and we're always watching for what would be good opportunities for our customers. So that is something that we'll be keeping a very close eye on.
Your company's stock, of course, is now publicly traded. ChannelAdvisor is a public company, as an indication of what you've done and of your success. On a personal level, Scott, what's it like for you to run a public company?
It's exciting. I'm a serial entrepreneur. This is my third company, and you always think that maybe someday you'd like to take a company public. And my first two, we ended up just selling those at different paths along the way. It made sense for the investors to do that. And this time, I think we got really fortunate here by being in the e-commerce landscape and riding this wave that we've seen of these e-commerce channels and more retailers and even branded manufacturers coming online. So we were able to take the company public last year, and that was pretty exciting. And now it's like anything; it's got its pros and cons, and now we're kind of learning how to navigate that. And it's been pretty exciting. It's I think one of the nice things is when you go public, it's kind of like raising money. So we raised over $90 million in capital, and being able to deploy that to areas where we see big opportunities, like in helping our customers. So, for example, since we went public, we've announced support for Mercado Libre in Brazil and Tmall, which is part of Alibaba in China. Those are the kinds of things we couldn't have done without going public. So it's really good for our customers, which is kind of our number one consideration, and we're real excited to be able to stretch and provide these things that we think are, they're a little bit out there, and when people are going to need them, so next year or so. But we'll be ready when customers say, hey, I'm ready to start selling into China, or I want to sell into Brazil. We'll have all that capability ready for them.
That's terrific. Scott, we just have another minute or two here left. Anything else on your mind today?
Well, one theme that's kind of interesting, and I always keep track of the different trends we see in e-commerce, and we talked mobile and whatnot. So you saw this wave of marketplaces that came out because of the success of Amazon. So Best Buy, Sears, Newegg, Buy.com, et cetera. And then, what I get excited about with the Facebook buy button is not only does Facebook have the potential to be a pretty large e-commerce channel, but now, there's reports that folks have seen Twitter testing a similar kind of a concept. There's a very popular mobile application called Wanilo that seems to be testing something as well. So I think we could see this kind of wave of new options for listeners, retailers, as places to put their goods. And I think that's good for our industry because, in a world where you have kind of Google, Amazon, and eBay, that's great. You have three choices, but, it's kind of like ABC, CBS, and NBC. Wouldn't it be better to have 10 more like cable channels like, Fox and CNN and whatever? So I think we're going to have many more options for both consumers and retailers in the future. And that makes it, I think we'll look back at this as a bit of a golden age because there's going to be some exciting new ways for, small, middle, and even large retailers to take advantage of this and get their products in front of consumers.
Okay. Well, for purposes of our listeners, we've been visiting with Scott Wingo. Scott is the CEO of ChannelAdvisor, which is a leading e-commerce software solutions provider. ChannelAdvisor is now a publicly traded company. The website is ChannelAdvisor.com. That's ChannelAdvisor.com. And Scott Wingo, the CEO of ChannelAdvisor, we want to thank you for your time today, sir.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Kerry.